CargoWise Landside is deeply committed to revolutionizing landside logistics. With a complete enterprise system built for modern trucking and container drayage operators that includes proven drayage transportation management, digital rate and quote management, real-time container track and tracing, and on-demand truck, trailer, and container storage. Excellence in container drayage starts with the right software. Enhance transportation management, optimize shipment execution, and improve intermodal business operations with Trinium TMS, Draymaster, GeoStamp Track, and SecureSpace. To learn more, please visit cargowise.com/landside.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the new show that I'm going to be hosting every second and fourth Friday of every month. I'm Eric Johnson, and you are joining TPM today. For those of you who are longtime viewers of this show, you may know that it used to be called LogTech Live. New year, new brand. We rebranded the show, and it's TPM Today going forward, where we're going to talk about the same types of things we talked about before with a new kind of brand, a new look, new feel, but the focus is still the same. We're going to have great guests talking about things that I love to talk about: technology, international logistics, domestic logistics, how shippers, forwarders, carriers, ports, software vendors think about the most challenging topics of the day. So that doesn't change. I have a great guest for you today. We're going to be talking about electronic bills of lading, one of my favorite things to cover, and something that's going to be a core topic at TPM in just 50 days. TPM is 50 days away, if you can believe it or not. There's still time to register. Registration is going fantastic. This is the event to be at if you are in the containerized shipping or supply chain industry. You can use the code that's flashing on the screen, EJ20TPM, to get 20% off a new registration. If you've already registered, sorry, we gave you lots of early bird opportunities, sorry. But for new registrants, use that code to get 20% off. This week, there was some really horrifying news in a place that's very near and dear to my heart, Los Angeles, where I grew up. I grew up in Pasadena. There's obviously anyone who's been on the news, or been watching the news, has seen the fires that have been devastating large parts of Southern California, including near where I grew up. There are lots of ways to contribute, and I would encourage you all to figure out the one that works best for you, or the ones that you trust and worked with before. One that Sarah Barnes-Humphrey at Let's Talk Supply Chain Network forwarded to me is Baby to Baby, which helps support children in poverty who are already, have needs. Those needs became a lot more urgent for a lot of them who are in the areas affected by the fires that are still ongoing in LA. So please do what you can to help. Most important thing is just call people spend some money on worthwhile causes to help people. There's going to be so much rebuilding that needs to be done. We all just need to kind of focus on that. All right, news of the week. I'm jumping fast here. Drayage diversification. This is a topic that I wrote about. Story just posted last Friday. I've been working on this story for a couple months, talked to a number of awesome people in our industry who are focused on the drayage portion of the industry. This is always a topic that gets so little coverage, but it's so important. And I talked about in this story about how shippers are starting to look at diversifying their dray partners, whether it's brokers, whether it's working directly with carriers, and the means to do that, and using technology to do that, and sort of how you get that diversification mix right. Really important topic, especially as we've seen companies look at diversifying everything else in their supply chain. Oftentimes, drayage is not as diversified. You tend to go with one provider in a gateway, whether it's because you have a relationship with them, or you're working with a nationwide drayage provider, or you farm that off to a 3PL or a container line to manage that part, and they themselves use kind of a preferred drayage partner. So just looked at kind of the all the different permutations and what goes into diversifying yourself from a drayage perspective. The second story I'll point to, just posted earlier this week, where I looked at how LTL spot or transactional pricing is starting to incrementally grow. Still, the lion's share of volume on the LTL market moves on contract, often shipper-specific contract pricing or general tariff pricing provided by LTL carriers. What's happening in the market is there are certain carriers that are aiming to reach different segments of the market. And some of those segments don't have a lot of familiarity with LTL shipping, and they want a quick quote. They may be infrequent. They may be moving small volumes. They don't have enough volume to get a contract or to even think about getting a contract. They just want a price. And so some carriers are building transactional pricing tools or using software vendors to help them build those to attract those new sources of what was I going to say? The new sources of capacity from those LTL carriers. So really interesting. Definitely encourage you to to read both of those stories. Oh, thanks, Nicole, for popping that. This is the story on pricing technology. It's not so much that shippers are moving en masse, kind of bedrock LTL shippers are moving en masse to this. It's more that it's opening the window to new types of shippers who are playing around with LTL. So just encourage you to read both of those stories. I spent a lot of time on both of them. Really excited to get feedback on both. But with that, shifting gears quickly, I wanted to bring on my guest for the week this week, Bertrand Chen, who's a CEO of an organization called the Global Shipping Business Network, or GSBN. Bertrand, so glad you could join us. You're in Hong Kong, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, it's right now 11 o'clock.
Yeah, burning the midnight oil for us. I appreciate it. Okay, so give us a little background on yourself and what GSBN is.
Yeah, first, thanks a lot for having me on this show. I think, as you say, long-time listener, first-time caller. So I was born in China, grew up in France, hence this weird French name and me speaking a French accent. So I started my career actually in finance as a trader on Wall Street for Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley in New York, and then later I moved to Hong Kong to work for Bank of America and fell into logistics completely by chance when I started to work for a company called CK Hutchison Holding, who's the holding company of Hutchison Ports, famous GTO. And that's how I got involved into a project that eventually became GSBN. So GSBN is the blockchain consortium. We were founded in 2021, so almost 4 years. And yeah, so that's my background.
Great. So give people, I think some people may be familiar with GSBN. Some people may not have heard of it at all. What are you trying to build? Who is it serving? Just kind of the basics on that.
Sure. So GSBN, the idea is basically, I think the project really started like 2017. I think that's a 2 or 3 cycle of Bitcoin going up when IBM was trying to push blockchain, enterprise blockchain to the entire industry, and supply chain was identified as one of them. And I think there's 2 main projects that came out of this wave. One was the ill-fated trade lens, and the other one was GSBN. So the idea is to use blockchain to try to digitize the industry, the supply chain industry. And we are working with shipping line, terminal operator, banks, insurance company, anything has to do with global trade. I think over the last almost 4 years, we've tried many products for different things. And I think as the title of the talk today suggests, we think that we find the killer application for the technology, probably the electronic bill of lading.
Okay. So I have written a lot about this topic over the last couple of years. We have a session. You will be on that session at TPM in early March around where we are with eBL adoption and kind of where things go from here. Can we kind of give a picture for people of where? Let me give some further context. 2023, I believe, most of the top 10 shipping lines, if not all of them, commit to transitioning to completely 100% electronic bills of lading by 2030. The de facto presumption is that at that point, most bills of lading were still paper bills of lading or PDF bills of lading that were not sort of networked documents, but were literally standalone documents that sometimes flown around the world to accompany cargo. Where are we in terms of that kind of commitment, which is now 5 years away, not 7 years away?
So we've got better.
Okay.
But we're still quite far away from 100%.
Okay.
So the most recent, I think, survey or response from DCSA, which is actually the organization that managed to get the top 9 shipping line to basically agree to sign to this commitment. I think they've shared in September that roughly 5% of bill of lading are now digitized, and that's across their member. My personal stats talking to the carrier, I think the top, it's kind of a different strata. The top container liner, I think around 10%, which means if the average is 5, that means some people are really doing not much.
Right.
So that's kind of,
Right.
you see the classic stratification. The other thing that's interesting also is this adoption is very different in different regions in the world. What we see, actually, the adoption is much higher in Asia, especially in China. So
Okay.
China, the top container line, I think they're above 20%.
Okay.
So the comparison, you think of average 5%, top 10% globally, but actually in China is twice this 20%. So like everything else, like other technology, adoption is very dependent in different region, and the speed is quite varied depending also the strategy the carriers are using to push for it. That's where we are today.
What do you think is behind sort of higher adoption in Asia versus sort of, I'll call them destination markets on the main haul lanes?
I think one thing I think of is there's quite a lot of push right now especially in Asia and also in China for new technology, for blockchain and for digitization of the supply chain. So there are some policy by the government that's saying, okay, we want to digitize the supply chain, we want to adopt new technology, and therefore there's, I would say, more push. A lot of the freight forwarder in China actually are very keen to try to use this kind of new technology. And also, the most interesting anecdote is the flow that use the most eBL is China to US. And the reason for that is because the release process in US is actually quite broken. And people use eBL to address the concern about potentially the risk of release in US. So it's completely not normal reason to use the electronic bill of lading. But if people are being pragmatic in China, say, actually, this is the pretty good user experience, we want to use that. So a lot of small, medium-sized freight forwarder are using that. So an example could be the Well. We organized, sorry, I'm getting ahead myself a bit. In November last year, we organized actually eBL adoption summit with many stakeholders in China to basically find out, hey, why is adoption higher? And those are the feedback we receive. And the Well is a one-named freight forwarder who actually does a lot of trade, and they're explaining to us why it was happening this way. So that's, I think, one of the reasons. And also, I think some of the carrier, just because the volume of trade also, right? By nature, China as a big export country will actually see a lot of adoption of eBL just by that also.
Yeah, interesting. So one thing that we've talked about a lot is, if there's multiple providers sort of enabling electronic bills of lading, of which GSBN is one, how does the market sort of work? How does this play out in the market if shipping line A is working with provider A, forwarder B is working with provider B, shipping line C is working with provider C, like that interoperability question, of which DCSA has taken tried to take a role. Can you give people a little bit of a landscape of like the eBL vendor environment, and is it helpful as opposed to just having one or two kind of vendors just kind of pushing this unilaterally, from an adoption perspective?
Sure. So first off, I think it's important for folks on this stream to understand that For the shipping line to adopt eBL, there's a big gatekeeper, which is the IGPNI Club, which is the Association of Insurance Company, because they need to approve a solution. So this solution we accept to insure it. We treat a digital electronic bill of lading the same as a paper bill of lading. If IGPNI Club does not approve the solution today, a carrier cannot get insurance when they issue a BL. So that's basically a no-go for any carriers.
Yeah.
So essentially IGPNI Club, they are actually kind of having this gatekeeping function. But even with the approval today, there's 12 IGPNI Club approved eBL solution. So as you said at the beginning, it's like, yes, it's a too many solution, I would say, right? And among the 12, you have basically two, which is kind of, I won't call legacy, because legacy sounds bad, but the historical incumbent, if you will, eBL, and that's Bolero and SDocs. They exist for many, many years. They've proven themselves, they established themselves in some key, I would say, niche or key markets. And then the other 10 who are all blockchain based and created over the last, let's say, 5-6 years, right? So as you said, it's actually very confusing both for shipping line, for BCOs, for shipping in general, like which one do I pick? What's the difference? And my personal opinion is actually you'll see this explosion of solution, but the market is not big enough to support so many solutions, right? So first off is probably have sort of a less solution to choose from. People who prove themselves, they have to select which market they want to be in, what is their core focus, core value proposition, they already do that. And then you're right, because even if let's say we have kind of falling off less solution, it's not gonna be just one solution. There's no way, right? In the world today, you will still probably be left with a handful, let's say 3 to 4. In the container market. In bulk, I think it's going to be more complicated. In container, probably 3 to 4. And then the question is between 3 to 4, how they're going to work together. So the interoperability is a big topic today. And actually on GSBN, we're also working to try to enable that. Right now, we're working with 2 solution provider. One is IQX, and the other one is ICE, SDocs, to enable that. And actually, we're getting pretty close to have an interoperability which is both legal, meaning you have the approval of IGPNI Club, this interoperability is okay. And the second thing is also technically feasible, meaning you can trust it. And you can solve that, then the customer are happy, the bank's happy, the shipping lines are happy. So everybody can stay within the solution that they want to use. They don't have to sign up to all the solution. And then the eBL can flow easily across solution. I think that's ultimately the direction we're going. However, some people are using this as an excuse, right? So as long as we don't have interoperability, I don't want to try eBL because it's too complicated. That I think is a mistake, because a lot of people today can use eBL quite well. And I think probably there's 4 solutions that's, in my opinion, scaling quite well right now. So the first one I would say is probably WaveBL, which they are becoming the incumbent, the blockchain incumbent, because they really started in 2016 quite early.
Yep.
And during the pandemic, they actually really scaled up, pushed by MSC. So MSC was really the leader, I think, the first one to push aggressively eBL during the pandemic, and Wave actually scaled really well. So they have this very good position, very simple to use, and I think the customer basically responded well. Then the second one from the new breed blockchain is IQX. Now IQX, basically Costco, OOCL, and Hapag-Lloyd last year is pushing that aggressively, and then this solution is also scaling as well. Then the other one is SDocs and Bolero. And that's interesting because they've been around for like very long time, but they got acquired by a large company, and now they are, I would say, a very strong business model. Not necessarily the technology, the blockchain, or even the fancy technology, but they have the good backing and good distribution. So ICE, which is Intercontinental Exchange, which essentially to provide the financials. It's like a clearing exchange for traders. Right. They actually, so they run the New York Stock Exchange. So they actually own SDocs. Yeah. So they are basically really good for commodities, for bulk. They're really strong. And they actually
great distribution channel for that product.
Great distribution. They actually just did a deal for Trafigura for 2.8 billion loan facility with ING, which is backed by eBL. So they are actually really, really going gangbusters, really, really good. And then the other one, which is Bolero, got acquired by Wisec.
Right.
So as you know, Wisec, who also sponsor, I saw this show at the beginning, they have very good distribution with the freight forwarders. So I think these two, even the technology, you can say, it's old, it's not blockchain. Actually, I think they're really, really good because they have the distribution. The other two that I mentioned earlier is a new technology, is blockchain. They are more like, let's say, more modern. But at the same time, I think they have to prove themselves compared to the old one. But at the same time, these four, I think, are really, they all have their advantage and strong supporter. And I think the races are to see which one are gonna actually grow fast and dominate the market.
Okay, so you talked a bit about the technical side of things, especially on the interoperability. One thing I wanted to get at was whether you think ultimately, maybe not even ultimately, right now, is the challenge more of a cultural, behavioral challenge, or are there still technical constraints that even participants that may be very interested in moving on this, there's technical things that are hard for them to get around?
So there's no technical challenge. Okay, so anyone who complains about technical, wrong. Anyone complain about legal, wrong. I think it's still a value proposition. So all the people who won't adopt eBL has adopted. The problem is nobody's gonna say, "Hey, I'm a shipper. I want to use eBL," because at the end of the day, the business is to move cargo from point A to point B. It's not about taking care of documentation, and I think that's fundamentally an issue I see today. So anyone who sell a bit of lading, the electronic bit of lading, as like, "Oh, this is the technology you need to adopt," they're missing the point. You are in the service business to move goods. And I think that is the thing that's holding back this transition, is how do you frame adopting electronic bill of lading as helping you conducting business, right? So nobody's gonna say, it's a bit like, how should I put it? I won't mention name, but some container liner, they basically make the argument is, electronic bill of lading is better than paper. Paper is this price, so I'm gonna charge you, let's say, $50 for electronic bill of lading because it's more safe, it's picked up technology, instantaneous.
Value add.
And I'm trying to value add. I'm trying to explain to them, wait, hold on a sec. Imagine you are Sergey Brin and Larry Page. You create Google, right? And you go to the market, you say, you know what, my search engine is really, really good. I'm gonna charge you $50 per search. Do you think this business will scale? And I think that's what some of the people are still missing when they try to push it. The idea is you need to create the ecosystem, you need to create the value, and the value is not the documentation itself, is all the ancillary service that's around it. So it could be if you link payment to it, if you link some operation, data exchange. And to me, this is really the value of the electronic bill of lading. It's not actually the documentation. And that's actually, in my opinion, the reason the adoption is still not scaling fast enough. Because when you go to a customer and tell them documentation, it's like, I don't have time. My job is to to move goods.
But
I don't care about documentation.
Let me play devil's advocate a little bit on that. So if I'm a shipper and I'm being approached and I'm being told, forget about this as like, it's a better way of creating and filing and submitting and transferring documents. It's actually enabling all of this other stuff to happen once that data is in a structured format, in an electronic structured format. My first inclination as a shipper might be, well, that just means all of my providers are going to have a new way to monetize me because that data is structured. Is that a wrong way to think about this?
No, that's it's not completely wrong, but it's not okay. So it depends. And I think maybe the better way to think about it is about Facebook, right? So everybody thinks Facebook monetizes my data. My data is so valuable. Bertrand Chen, Eric Johnson, my clickstream, what I look at is super valuable. The reality is not that valuable, right? Nobody cares what you do. However, what's valuable is if I understand the behavior, I can try to influence. The advertiser will pay a lot of money for this. But as an aggregate, if you process that to do something, and here's the same thing: when you go and say, "I'm going to sell the data of the customer," that's definitely a no-no in my opinion,
it's
right?
However, it's not the individual customer data.
Yeah, or you use other means to create value from it, and then everyone can benefit, right? So I think that's the thing that people are missing. It's not about monetizing the data. I think that was one of the reasons some of the initial projects failed, because people thought the idea is put everything on blockchain. You have this honeypot, all the data is here, and you can monetize it. You can make tons of money by selling, but it's never about selling data. It's about creating value for the customer. And I think that's the thing, that's the most important thing. We should be not forgetting is it's at the end of the day moving goods from point A to point B. Was when you have container. My contention here is not just moving goods, is enabling trade, right? And I think the thing that you can do today is potentially, if you have eBL, is it's better for compliance, for like the custom declaration. It's better for tracking. It's better for getting finance, get financing for trade. It's this all the ancillary service you can create around this that doesn't exist today. And I think that's where ultimately the value of eBL will come from, not actually just putting a PDF on the blockchain. Nobody cares about this.
I have so many more questions to ask you, and we're already like short on time, unfortunately. I would encourage everyone to come to TPM, and we will continue this discussion with Bertrand and some other folks, including DCSA and MSC in that session. But you wrote a commentary for Journal of Commerce in end of 24, where you sort of argued a position that we should think of this in the same way that we thought of the actual physical container itself being transformational for the shipping industry. In like a minute, can you summarize what you were trying to say in that piece? I encourage people to read it. The link to the article is in the comments, so definitely read the commentary if you can, but just give people a little bit of insight into that.
Sure. By the way, when I posted that article on LinkedIn, I knew I hit a nerve because I started to get trolls, people trolling me and disagree with me and arguing me on internet. So you get something right. So my point is very simple. Adopting container is not originally, when actually the book I see behind you in your bookshelf, The Box. I read that also. That's why I got my inspiration for this. When Malcolm McLean created the container, he wasn't the first one to create the container. But the idea is, if you can create a system to move goods, then you can create value. My contention right now is actually moving data is much harder to do than actually moving goods, because we don't have the equivalent of a container for data. And if you use electronic bill of lading as means, it's not the only one. You can have other forms, but I think eBL could be one. You can do three things. You can have one single place. You have all the data that's required. You can use, because electronic bill of lading, there's the role of each players. You can control who can see what, so that only one person write the data, but can be read many times by different people. And the last thing, which I think is the most important thing, is you can track in time all the events that happen to a shipment. So you can link that to payment, to change of title, to a lot of complicated things. And then you can create a really interesting thing. You can link insurance, payment, compliance, everything can be linked to this shipment. So that's in hopefully 1 minute.
Yeah, that's a good summary. Really and interesting. This all gets at the eBL is a tool to influence a lot of other things that I think people in the industry recognize could be enhanced. By the way, a bunch of great comments. Thank you to everyone who submitted a couple questions or comments. Geisha, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, said, hint for the shipping industry, the way how carriers from other modalities digitize their space was to first offer digital channels and documents for free, not for additional fee, and then charge additionally for manual paper-based processing. I think that's what you were getting at, Bertrand. Okay. I have one question. I'm going to put you on the spot here. It has nothing to do with eBL. I asked this of all my guests. Who's your favorite band or musician and why?
I don't have a good answer to that. So I'm going to answer another question, which I think you should ask, which is what's your favorite TV show? My favorite TV show is Silicon Valley. Because I think we should really have an equivalent of Silicon Valley for logistics. My favorite character in Silicon Valley is Russ Hanneman.
Yes.
Because I think, yes.
The three commas. The three commas.
3 commas claps, yes.
All right. Maybe we'll do favorite TV show for 2025. You inspired me to think a bit differently about it. Bertrand, thank you so much. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Try to post more about what we're trying to do this year to explain a bit more what we're doing. And also, we have a GSBN.chat website.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Bertrand. This is really helpful. If you have questions, definitely reach out to Bertrand directly, or come to TPM and you can talk to him in person. Thank you so much. Happy New Year, and we'll talk soon, okay? Okay, quickly. The show's only 30 minutes now. It's not 45. Did I forget to mention that? Dad joke of the week. There's still always time for dad joke of the week. What? This is a great one. I love this one. Why do Peruvian owls always hunt in pairs? Because they're Inca hoots. Inca hoots. Get it? Inca hoots. I love that one. That's like a dad joke, like a prototypical dad joke. Love it. In any case, thank you so much. TPM, first episode of TPM today in the books. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. If this is your first time catching us, fantastic. If you're a longtime viewer or watcher, thank you so much for the support. Thanks to the Let's Talk Supply Chain Network for helping do this. And Happy New Year to everyone. And I'll see you in 2 weeks with another great show and great guest. Bye, everyone.